welcome back to Coffee Chat Club. This is Green Careers Unlocked, and I'm your host. In today's episode, we are talking about greenhouse gas accounting to climate resilience, with one of the leaders driving these conversations forward. Meet Lulu, managing consultant at Ramboll and founder of CarbonQ. With over a decade of experience, Lulu is an expert in helping companies set ambitious climate targets and navigate the complexities of global climate regulations. We will dive into Lulu's unique path, from earning a master's in sustainability management from University of Toronto to working in greenhouse gas footprint space for major companies in Canada and the US. If you're exploring a career in greenhouse gas accounting or climate risk, or you just work in the sustainability space and want to deepen your understanding, this conversation will help you understand the challenges of accurately measuring and reporting greenhouse gas emissions. Learn how to build a climate resilience into business operations, the core skills you need to succeed in the world of climate strategy, and honest insights about the reality of the work, what's rewarding, what's hard, and where this field is actually heading. She also drops some serious career advice for anyone looking to break into this specialized field, whether you are a fresh grad or someone pivoting from another industry. And of course, we will wrap up with a green lightning round, some quick, fun questions to get to know Lulu even better. So, whether you are fueling up on coffee or scrolling job posts at 2 a.m., plug in and get inspired. Because this chat proves there's no single blueprint for a climate career, just the courage to start yours. This is Coffee Chat Club Green Career Series, and this is episode 3. You have a degree from University of Toronto, Master's in Sustainability Management. And after a grad degree, you could have chosen any path in sustainability, right? But what led you to specialize in greenhouse gas accounting and climate risk management?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, for a lot of students who are in school for sustainability, they eventually learn that there's a lot of different types of jobs they can take on. So when you're in university, it's a good time to think about what aspect about sustainability are you really passionate about. And for me, my journey to figure that out was going to a lot of networking events. Just asking people who are actually working, what are some of their current struggles and where do they see the sort of industry are headed towards. Based on that feedback, I kind of tailored my research paper and elective class sort of in that direction. And at the time when I was in school, it was around the time when we were talking about, Paris agreements, greenhouse gas mitigation, greenhouse gas accounting. So I did a white paper or like research paper on internal carbon pricing because that was like up and coming, 10 some plus years ago. It was only a handful of companies doing it. So I did that and eventually caught the attention of my first employer. We started talking, and that's how I landed my first job. It wasn't really through, blind application to jobs like that. So, I landed my first job through more so relationship building. And it was really good because then you can up your technical skills, which is really important for a junior sustainability person.
Interesting. And you mentioned networking. So later in the show, we will be digging deeper on the networking part.
Mhm.
Okay. So my next question is, as a managing consultant at Ramboll, how does your day-to-day look like? What sort of skills you are using? What sort of projects you are working on? Say a typical week or a typical day in your life.
Yeah, I think as a consultant, really you're there to help clients solve an issue, a challenge. So we're there to serve. I think I'm a manager, so my role is a bit different. I project manage, I client manage, I also lead the team on technical level and review their work. So that's sort of like my day to day. I also do business development. So in Canada, what I'm really trying to do is understand what are the trends related to sustainability in today's world when, geopolitical winds are sort of uncertain. What should we focus on in terms of our service offerings? So those are the things I do on a day-to-day basis. But I would say at different level, as a consultant, you do different things. So more junior, you will be really heads down doing the analytical work, reporting, preparing client deliverables, working with your project manager to upskill yourself to be ready for that next level up. And then above me, you have sort of like the project directors, project owners. Their job is to make sure the clients are satisfied. We are delivering on our end in terms of the scope of work and further develop relationships with existing and future clients. So really that's the world of consulting. Like everyone has a role and we all are there to serve the client. But also with consulting, it's kind of difficult because sometimes the client comes to you with something very specific in mind and you're there to deliver on it. Other times clients are looking for sort of advice and guidance and you're there to provide that. So I think it's also about understanding what client really needs and offering whatever support they need so that they can be successful.
And you talked about technicality of your role, like even when you started till now, your work at Ramboll, it's like a very technical work. So, to set the stage up for young professionals or those who are interested
Mhm.
in sustainability or those who don't know much about greenhouse accounting and climate risk and all, can you talk a little bit about greenhouse gas inventory? What sort of like, how does that looks like? What tools, methodologies do you use?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when it comes to sustainability, because we're in a world where, we're really trying to understand, manage, and report and reduce emissions. Greenhouse gas emissions accounting is really the foundation to everything. So when it comes to gaining that technical expertise, it's really understanding and then be able to apply the greenhouse gas principles, right? So there's the corporate level greenhouse gas accounting guidance. There's scope one, which is what the company owns in terms of indirect emissions. Scope two is really what the company purchases through utilities. Scope three is how I like to explain it is they have influence over, but they don't have direct control over. So those are emissions along their value chain that, their products or services touch, but they don't have direct say in how those emissions kind of happen. So I think understanding that is really the premise of greenhouse gas accounting. Then I would advise everyone to really double down on understanding the methodologies and all the nitty gritty details around. Okay, well, if a company has a very unique situation, what do you do with it? Another one that comes up very often is data gaps, right? No company is perfect, especially for those who just started on this journey. They'll have a lot of data gaps, and data collection will be the most challenging part of greenhouse gas accounting work. So then, how do you help that? It's really understanding how do we close the gaps through various methodologies so that we can provide an inventory at the end of the day, but also provide recommendations for the company to further improve the quality of their data collection, the quality of their methodology for calculating their emissions. And, the end goal is continuous improvement to further report and understand emissions so that with that data, we can do something strategic about it, which is setting a target and then creating an emission reduction roadmap so you can reduce it. But a lot of times, we struggle nowadays with the action part, which is, well, great, we know our emissions, we have a target, we have a roadmap, but somehow like it kind of breaks there. Like companies struggle with reducing emissions, following through with it, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But that's what we're seeing currently in the industry.
And can you talk about some of the tools and softwares that you use for greenhouse gas accounting?
Well, greenhouse gas accounting, I think most people would start using Excel for calculations because the formulas themselves are pretty straightforward. It's really about the emission factors. That's really key to calculating emissions. There are a lot of tools out there that does greenhouse gas accounting, either free ones or paid ones. I think, the tools nowadays are pretty sophisticated in the sense that they can calculate your scope 1 and 2 emissions pretty accurately, given that you know exactly what's within your boundary, the type of data you need to provide, because that's on the company to decide. I think sometimes when a company is first embarking on this journey, they may not know everything what needs to go in it, but the data they provide might not be complete. Therefore, they struggle with completeness of their inventory. I think that's where some assistance from specialists can really help. Just getting that base year all verified, making sure that is the way it's supposed to be. And then for the following years, I think it makes total sense to use the tools following the same approach and methodology. Scope 3 is a whole different beast. I think, I think we all know, like, it's not easy, it's complex, it's highly customized depending on data availability, company situation, all that information. Unfortunately, because the company has no control over scope 3 emissions, which also means they have no access to those data. So in other words, they have to reach out and work with their value chain members to collect data. If that's not possible, then they'll have to rely on industry averages to estimate. As you can imagine, that just becomes more challenging. Scope 3, typically category 1, purchase goods and services, is the most has the highest emissions for most companies for under scope 3. And there are multiple ways to calculate scope 3 category 1 emissions. One way is to use that data, which the company has. So basically, you ask your finance teams like, hi, I need a list of all our spends by account and by the type of service and products. And with that, you can apply an EIO emission factor and then get a sort of an emission based on your spend. This is great because you have control over the data. You can sort of have a really good understanding of what that looks like. However, let's say inflation or currency fluctuation changes, but your service and product purchase, behavior has not changed, but you're riding that wave and your emission rise that wave as well. So you have no control over that at all. So that's why I say scope 3 is complex. It's a beast. Right now, I actually don't know if there's any tools out there that does 100%, great job at all the scope 3 category emission calculations. So I think that part is a bit more challenging. Otherwise, the tools can definitely be used for scope 1 and 2.
Yeah, and I myself was a Excel nerd. I use
Yeah.
Excel all the time, and yeah, sometimes it can be too much, especially with too much of data. Like Excel
No.
just won't cooperate with you. But I think
Right.
so far, even I have seen people using Excel on day-to-day basis for greenhouse
Oh,
gas
yeah.
accounting.
I think everyone does. Anyone who does calculation for emissions will at one point use Excel. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And because you mentioned scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, it's really important for these emissions to get audited by third party. And I know like you
Mhm.
have also served as an auditor. So can you tell us like how verification and third parties enhance the credibility of emission reporting?
Yes. So typically there are two levels of auditing or verification. So limited level assurance and reasonable level assurance. Limited really means, you're asking a verifier to check the emissions that you have reported and, like they'll do some spot checks and making sure your methodology makes sense. check invoices and understand your like internal data management and document control process. If there's no big red flags, then a limited level assurance letter can be issued. Whereas reasonable is sort of a more of a deep dive into it. So they'll really drill you on. Like I want to see sometimes all the invoices, and they'll speak to um, everybody who touches on the invoices, where how data is being sort of into, for example, into Oracle. They might do site visits and really see like how do you actually read the meters on your fuel tanks and all of that. I think companies will seek different level of assurance for different purposes. Sometimes regulations or legislations require a certain type of verification or audit on your reported emissions. So, for example, in U.S. and the EU, limited level of assurance is typically where it starts. Um, so we see a lot of limited level assurance on emissions, so specifically for scope 1 and 2. Scope 3, sometimes it's, advised to be included, sometimes not. As an example, like CDP, we all know that's voluntary reporting, right? But in CDP, there are questions about verification. What level of verification did you seek? Do you include scope 1, 2, as well as scope 3? All these responses influences your CDP score. So really, there's indirect, I guess, force or pressure on companies to showcase that the number of emissions that they report are validated, are accurate and trustworthy, because those informations are used by other stakeholders like investors to inform investment decisions. So as you can imagine, if the information can be incorrect, that might be misleading to some, strategic decisions.
You explained it so well. Like greenhouse gas accounting is scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, and then how like the auditing world works. So I'm pretty sure in our audience, those who are like new to this greenhouse gas accounting world, or who are interested in this field, or who are maybe on the finance side, wants to switch to this side, this conversation definitely have like helped them. So
Oh, there's one thing I do want to add. I'm sorry.
yeah,
But okay, so I covered greenhouse gas protocol. And typically that applies to like the corporate world. But then again, like corporate worlds also need to comply with regional regulations, right?
yeah.
So each province or state may sort of stipulate specific rules when it comes to methodology to report emissions and verification standards. So I think it's also important to highlight that, if your company is sort of regulated by the government, then you have to check the methodology and the guidelines set forth by the government and really follow that. And most of the time, those are government level emissions reporting methodology and guidelines are based on greenhouse gas protocol, as well as the ISO 14064 standards. And then usually verification are based on ISO 14064-3. So I think I just wanted to insert there, like, yeah, greenhouse gas protocol is really good, but also there's this ISO 2, and those inform some of the regulatory reporting requirements.
I have a couple of follow-up questions around this, but
Mhm.
I'll wait till our career advice and the skills section. So first, I'll wrap up this section and then jump to that section and ask my follow-up questions in there.
Okay.
So we talked about your expertise in greenhouse gas accounting world. Now, can you touch a little bit on climate resilience and climate risk reporting? I know this is another of your expertise, and maybe you can share some examples of your clients or of your own company where they have successfully built climate resilience into its operations.
Yeah, I think, climate risk, climate resiliency, greenhouse gas, these are things a lot of companies talk about. the way I like to sort of at the very high level set the stage is that greenhouse gas accounting, carbon offset credits are really mitigation. How do you mitigate your climate related risks? Whereas climate resiliency, adaptation strategies, those are more long term, like given the environment we're in, how do you adapt your businesses so that you can withstand the risks associated with climate change, so then you can operate sustainably for the foreseeable future. Mitigation is sort of like more near term. What actions can we take right now to mitigate? Adaptation is like how do we actually adapt? So those two pillars are both really critical in today's day and age. There's a lot of emphasis on one over the other sometimes. And then, resources and investments may not be sort of distributed equally, but in my opinion, both are equally important. So coming to the second pillar, which is climate adaptation and resiliency, the way I see it is from a business sort of operations perspective, right? So it's about, well, what is the risk associated with climate change that will impact my business? Is it going to interrupt my supply chain? Is it going to interrupt my operations? Is it going to put my people and assets sort of in danger, right, from extreme weather events? Well, I need to do a physical climate risk assessment. How do I do that? Well, it's really understanding what kind of extreme weather events are really a risk for the specific location that we're in or for the operations we're looking at within the business. And then once we sort of have that physical climate risk assessment done, and knowing which one are high risk from an asset perspective or operations perspective, then you can come up with a climate adaptation strategy, saying, okay, well, how do we protect it? How do we mitigate the risk? So really, I think in layman's term, this is really about risk management, business continuity, right? So again, those are terms and practices that's not new to the business world. It's that because our environment has changed a little bit, we need to expand our horizon to include additional risks or put priority on some of the climate related risks so that we're better prepared in emergency situations so that our businesses can continue to thrive. So to give you an example, if let's say in Ontario, Toronto, freeze thaw cycle or, ice rain happens, it's going to be slippery out there or that you might lose power. Well, what do? Right? It's something that happens and we see it happen. And we do see on news that companies lose a lot of money because either they cannot carry forward with their operation or their products, go bad. They can't provide services. Well, that's not great. But a lot of times companies only look really internally, only at, okay, well, how do I protect my store or how do I protect my assets? But sometimes you have to look beyond your immediate company boundary and think about, okay, the interdependencies between your companies and the sort of, for example, utility company that you work with to make sure that, hey, they also have a plan where you know how to sort of bring your power back online to mitigate some of those issues. So climate resiliency should go beyond your company boundary. It should be looked at as sort of collaboration or focus on the interdependencies between your company and those that you work very closely with that has, that can support your operations in supply chain. So that's how I like to see it. I don't want to go into too much detail today. It can be a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. Just for greenhouse gas accounting, climate risk, adaptation, and mitigation, I mean, we can have like one full podcast on this one because these are such an important topic and especially for corporate sustainability. And also these are very technical topics to discuss. So I can understand, but it's you provided a really good overview to people who are new to this or people who are really interested in knowing about this field.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about challenges related to greenhouse gas accounting, like data collection, data quality, data completeness. But can you touch briefly on challenges related to climate risk and mitigation work.
Hmm. I think the challenge comes down to, well, at the board level, the board of directors and a lot of times investors really care about this. So this topic does come up quite often, and they want to know, well, does the company know about any of these risks? Is it really impacting our business, and what are we doing about it? And is it on your radar constantly, right? However, when it comes down to sort of the management level, a lot of times, sometimes I see that discussion does happen, but it happens within a smaller group. They sort of like, sit and talk about based on their experience and their knowledge. Sometimes it's completely enough. Other times they may not, they may miss a few things. So I think it's really important to always engage someone who can actually um, read and pull in climate science and data to double check, this geographic location. What are the high risks when it comes to climate related threats, right? And then go through an exercise with a team that actually are on the ground and talk about, well, in this case, so for example, extreme heat, what is really happening on ground? Like, can we actually put someone out there in the field to do work? If so, you say yes, but are they going to overheat wearing all the PPEs? A lot of times, like, yes, actually, it's a lot under the sun. So people actually wouldn't be going out there. If they're forced to go out there, then they're at a health risk, right? They may collapse and all that stuff. So that's a risk. I think without having those conversations with people who are actually on the ground working, it's really hard to really have a really good grip around what is the real risks, and how do we sort of develop a plan or strategy around mitigating these risks so that our operation is not paused or interrupted because of certain events. So I would really encourage, you know, eventually that these conversations do happen at the staff level and then roll up the feedback to the management team who are assessing risk, and then for the investment group, the finance group, to really, dedicate um, funding to address and protect your operations and your supply chain and your assets and your people against these extreme weather. Because at the end of the day, it's just good business practice. It's not even just sustainability anymore. It's about, okay, how do we better protect our business and people so that we can be a better business for everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also about inclusion of climate science,
Mm-hmm.
whether we like it or not, in our business decisions. Inclusion of climate science in our day-to-day talk, like how it's affecting us, the people around us, the environment around us. Okay, let's switch our gears and jump to career advice and a skills section. I'm pretty sure our audience is super excited for this section where you will be giving them actionable tips and ideas like how to grow up in their career or how to jump to this field if they're interested. So, the very first question I have for you is, what are some of the core skills that are essential for someone in your position? And when I say skill, I mean both technical as well as soft skills.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think it really depends on the person. I would say before jumping into any sort of career search or understanding what certification you need to look within yourself and having that conversation with yourself and understand what are your strengths and weaknesses. What will make you happy 5, 10 years down the road? The type of job that you're working with. Is it interacting with people, or is it, become an expert in providing expert advice on something? Everyone's got a different personality and different environments and different working style that they prefer. So we want to make sure that everyone look within themselves to understand how they best work and can thrive in sustainability in the working world. And then once you sort of decide, for example, oh, I really like talking with people and working with stakeholders, then yeah, like make that a focus area. Otherwise, hey, like there are a lot of certifications. You can become an expert in something and figure out what that is and then go for it. I think once you figure that out, I would really also just double check sort of your decision with others who are already doing the type of work that you want to do. So it's either through LinkedIn, just reach out to anybody that their profile catches your attention and send a message and say, hi, like, I'm looking to develop a career in the sector that you're currently in. I just want a 20-minute of your time and, pick your brain about it and see if it's a good fit for myself. I know a lot of people hesitate in doing so because they're scared of rejection. But at the end of the day, like the worst case you'll get is they won't respond to you. But really, that's not a loss to you. What if they do respond? And what if they provided you with great advice and that was exactly what you were looking for? So then the value is obviously reaching out. So the more you do so, the more you feel kind of awkward about it. So I know the first few times it can be awkward, but then after a few tries, you'll be like, yeah, I got this. I'll keep reaching out to people. And I think you'll definitely reap the benefits in the future. Another way is to attend networking events. Recently I attended networking events after a long time that I haven't. And it was hard, sitting at my desk deciding, hesitating, should I go, should I not go? Um, and eventually I decided to go. And it was a really good decision on my part because it was fun, talking to people, learning about what they do, what they're struggling with, and just genuinely sharing your knowledge with them. And you're able to make friends with people who are like you. Again, it's like really difficult, especially for people who are introverted. It's like, I don't want to go there and talk to people. I don't know how to start a conversation. I feel awkward in the room. I don't know what to do. But trust me, like, you're not the only one. I'm sure like 60-70% of people in that room feel the same way. I think my advice of, approaching a networking event is that the moment or before you walk in, tell yourself, I'm not here to look for a job. I'm not here to impress anyone. I'm only here to listen to what other people have to say about their jobs. If people are interested in what I do, I'll share. And if I find someone I like and, we click, great, I get to make friends. You can always just leave if that's not the place for you. Like, don't worry. And once you're in that man's site, and then just, smile and walk. If people are talking in the middle of a conversation, it's totally fine. Smile, make eye contact, and walk up to them. It's like, hi, can I join your conversation? And then just like listen. You don't have to start saying what I do, blah, blah, blah. You can just stand there and listen. Like, I think that's a really good way to learn and validate your career path and decisions and make connections with individuals face to face so that they can provide valuable insights for you. So, I think that those are my key two top advice for those who are seeking to understand how to pick a career in sustainability.
I love the way you put it all together, your approach to networking, how you feel, and what others are feeling. And I'm a big proponent of networking myself. So
Right?
when I started my career journey after my grad degree, I have reached out to so many people. So many people
Yeah,
turned me down, but I was really fortunate to sit in a call with people who really helped me shape my future.
yeah,
So I 200% agree
yeah,
with I'm a live example of this basically.
yeah, for sure. Of, of course. And now you feel like, you want to pay it forward. Hence why you're doing this podcast, right?
Yeah. And for someone who wants to specialize in greenhouse gas accounting, like say somebody has a degree in sustainability or somebody has skills like data analytics skill, they know greenhouse gas accounting and they want to work in the field of greenhouse gas accounting, climate risk, SBTI, CDP. What sort of technical advice from technical skill perspective you will give to them, whether like they should be doing this certification or that certification?
Yeah. I think from a certification perspective, definitely greenhouse gas protocol type of training and certification, ISO 14064 1 2 3 type of training are all good. A lot of those, I think you can find materials online to self-study and take sort of exams, or you can take courses and apply it through your work experience. I think, learning, getting certification is one thing, but doing the actual work is another thing. Like, you'll find that sometimes in the real world, it doesn't fit perfectly into the guidance document that you have studied before. And what do you do? And that's a really good learning opportunity with those who are senior, who are more experienced than you on your team to learn from them. I think that is really the value of doing greenhouse gas accounting is beyond what's said in the guidance document. When you're stuck, what do you do about it? I think that is really the key. And unfortunately, that is learned through experience. So I would say joining a consulting firm is really helpful in gaining those experiences very, very quickly because you're working on a lot of inventories from different sectors, different companies, different sizes with different issues. You get lots of that just in 1 year versus when you join a company, you work on one company's inventory, but you really get to do like a deep dive into that and understand, on the company side, the struggle of finding invoices, consolidating data. When they don't match, what do you do about it? How do you roll up the data? How do you keep the documents straight for reporting and for verification? So I think there are two ways of doing so. If you're focused on bringing up your skills of actual calculations, I would say, yeah, try to go into like a consulting firm, do an internship or whatever it may be, and then do a lot of inventory. Or if you really want to understand the full life cycle of greenhouse gas accounting at the corporate level, then join a company, like really work with operations, finance, supply chain, your corporate asset team to figure that out. So you can go both ways.
Interesting. Now, let's talk about trends in the future outlook. What upcoming regulations or trends do you think will have the biggest impact on corporate climate strategies?
I think that's a really tough and big question, especially given today's situation. There's a lot of regulations, both voluntary and compliance regulations out there related to sustainability, climate risk, climate disclosures. But we're also seeing a lot of those requirements being pulled back and the deadlines being pushed back. I think it's hard to say what's really going to happen. But I think, even if with the scrutiny around sustainability and climate risk is softening right now, it's not going away. So the demand for understanding what's happening around sustainability, your risk, how you disclose your performance, how you assess your risk, how you invest sustainability into your strategy and everything, that's not going away. I think it's just, we're finding a hurdle globally when it comes to sustainability. A lot of companies are struggling with reaching targets. I think, from my perspective, I'm following the movement of regulations, legislation, standards development more closely now than ever. Because from a company's perspective, that's how they will decide what to do from a sustainability perspective. Another one is from an investor perspective. What are investors saying? Because really, a lot of times, initiatives and every decision made within company, you can trace it back to a dollar. There has to be a financial reason behind a lot of the actions a company take. So that's another sort of area I'm following is what are investors really saying? Do they really care about sustainability? What aspect of sustainability or climate risk are they asking now versus before? So that's another one. Lastly is from a risk perspective. Are we seeing companies struggling from reputational damages related to sustainability? Are we seeing them struggling with supply chain risk, business continuity? If so, then that will definitely be a focus area because we know with extreme weather events, right now is not going to get better anytime soon. So this risk is real. It's going to be there. So it has to be, looked at, and actions has to, happen in order for something to mitigate it. So those are really the three areas I'm personally following right now. But depending on the industry you're in, the type of work you do, you might be following different focuses than I am.
And with all this scrutiny and geopolitical storm, where do you see this field heading in next 5 to 10 years? And I'm curious to know whether you are hopeful or hopeless.
I am always hopeful because I find for myself that I become hopeless or lose sort of focus and hope. I can't do the work I do anymore. I'm passionate about sustainability because I want to do something good for businesses, for the society. It just makes good sense to me. So I always remain hopeful. And the way I look at sustainability is really about striking a balance for organizations between, financial performances, um, sustainability and risk management and so on and so forth. Nothing is absolute, right? You have to find that balance that works for your company, but also incorporating key aspect of sustainability that just makes good business sense. So I'm more focused on the business aspect of sustainability. Um, and yeah, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it is going to be very difficult to predict what's going to happen. But, just putting yourself in the shoes of businesses, understanding sort of how they make decisions and using sustainability as a leverage to help them make good business sense decisions is always sort of how I like to approach this. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. It's not going away. Let's just say that. But I only hope for stronger regulations and more commitment from everyone around the world.
And I'm also an optimistic person, so I am also hopeful that good things will come. So now it's time to wrap up our show. And usually in this podcast, we wrap up with some fun Q&A round. Okay. So our fun wrap up round is called the Green Lightning Round. And in this round, I will be asking you a couple of questions. And you will have only 15 seconds to answer each question. And either it can be a one word or one liner, but you have to think quick and answer quick. Are you ready?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. The most exciting innovation in climate tech right now?
Oh, insetting. So yeah, carpet insetting.
Interesting. So if you weren't in sustainability, what completely different career would you try?
That's a good question. I'll probably do my own business in some sort. But yeah,
So a
I've never
business
thought about
owner. No, it's a good
it.
answer. Business owner. One is really interesting. And my favorite, GHG reporting, spreadsheet nightmare or data geek stream?
Excel nightmare.
Okay. For me, it's like data geek stream, but only 90% of time. 10% of time, it's like nightmare. Okay.
Yeah,
Final question of this round. Your go-to resource for staying updated on sustainability trends.
LinkedIn.
Awesome. Any final words for our listeners?
I would say just stay optimistic if you can, and it's a good thing that you feel uncomfortable sometimes. So push yourself out of your comfort zone because you'll reap the benefit for sure, whether it be networking or working on a different project or applying for a role that you always want. It doesn't hurt to try because the worst you get is no response, and we can all deal with that. So that's my closing remarks and a word of encouragement here.
Amazing. And where can people find you or follow your work?
I'm on LinkedIn. I definitely respond very promptly on LinkedIn. You can search me by Lulu Lee, MSCSM, work at Calgary to it. I'll come up as your top search.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed the conversation.
If you're still here, congrats. You're officially part of the climate crew, the curious mind, the data geeks, and the risk strategist. If you learned anything new today about GHG accounting, climate risk, or how not to lose your mind in a sea of Scope 3 emissions, give this a like. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Comment below and tell us what's one climate question you're dying to have answered. Or maybe just say hi. We love meeting fellow green nuts. Share this with your coworker who thinks GHG stands for Great Happy Goals, or anyone plotting their next green career move. A big thank you to Lulu for sharing her expertise and passion with us today. If you're inspired, check out the links in the description below to connect with Lulu on LinkedIn and stay updated on her work with Ramboll and Carbon Cube. And thank you so much for tuning into Coffee Chat Club. And wait, don't go too far. Next, we are diving into environmental advocacy, where we will uncover what it's really like working in the environmental advocacy, the skills, challenges, and truth behind sustainability jobs. Until then, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing that purpose.